A wealthy man, infertile and suffering from a terminal illness, disguises himself as a beggar to give away all his money, but something unexpected happens. Flavio gripped the steering wheel tightly as the darkness of the night surrounded him. The city lights flashed by in blurry streaks, as if the world was moving too fast for him to keep up. The news his longtime friend and doctor, Marcelo, had given him still echoed in his mind. 1 year at most, he repeated to himself, trying to absorb the weight of those words. He felt as if time was a relentless thief, ready to take away everything he had never fully appreciated. When he finally parked in front of his house, Flavio remained in the car for a few minutes, and the tears he had been holding back began to flow uncontrollably down his face. He couldn't believe that despite all the wealth he possessed, he had no one he could trust or who genuinely cared about him. All this time for nothing, he murmured to himself as he got out of the car. The luxurious house with its gleaming walls and expensive furniture now felt like a golden prison. Every room echoed with his loneliness, reminding him that everything he had accumulated in life could not fill the emptiness he felt in his heart. Flavio climbed the stairs towards his bedroom, each step heavier than the last. Each step felt heavier than the last. When Flavio finally lay down on the bed, the tears came with full force. He curled up between the silk sheets, sobbing like a child, mourning the opportunities he had missed. He should have adopted. He should have done something. But now it was too late, he thought, overwhelmed by regret. Flavio had always wanted a child, but he was born infertile, and having a biological child was an impossible dream. The following days blurred together, with Flavio lacking the strength to leave the house, let alone go to the office. Meetings were cancelled, and he ignored all calls from his partners and colleagues. Nothing seemed to matter anymore until, on a quiet afternoon, the phone rang. Flavio hesitated as he saw the number on the screen. It was Anna, a friend of many years. Despite not feeling up to it, he answered. "Hello, Flavio?" Anna's voice was cheerful as always. "You disappeared, huh? I was starting to get worried." Flavio sighed, trying to gather the energy to speak. "Hi, Anna. I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, Anna interrupted. "Oh, let's talk about that later, okay? I have something super important to ask you. I need a loan of $100,000 to take a trip with some friends. You know how it is, right? A little time to relax." Flavio felt a lump form in his throat and remained silent, struggling to process what he had just heard. She hadn't even asked how he was. She hadn't asked how he was or why he had disappeared. All she cared about was the money. His vision blurred with anger and sadness. "Flavio, are you there?" Anna insisted, impatient with his silence. He gripped the phone tightly before simply hanging up without saying a word. That was the final straw, the confirmation that everyone around him was only interested in what he could provide financially, not in who he truly was. He sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of loneliness pressing down on his shoulders. "Why didn't I realize this sooner?" he asked himself. All these years, and he had been so wrong about the people around him, but despite everything, a small spark of determination began to grow within him. "I still have time. Not much, but enough," he whispered to himself. It might be too late for many things, but not to change what was left of his life. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a chance to find something real, something that money couldn't buy. Flavio put on simple clothes and slipped on sandals before heading out to the supermarket. His eyes were red from days of crying, and as he walked through the streets, he felt the weight of his sadness in every step, as if the world around him was shrouded in a grey fog. When he arrived at the supermarket, he noticed an elderly woman sitting on a small chair, Selling roses, her gaze was gentle and her movements were slow, as if every gesture carried an infinite patience. "Would you like to buy a rose, young man?" the elderly woman asked, her voice as soft as a breeze. Flavio looked at her, surprised by the unexpected approach. For a moment, he hesitated, but something in her eyes made him want to say yes. "Yes, I can," he replied, instinctively reaching into his pockets for his wallet. It was then that he realized he had left home without it. "Oh, I forgot my wallet at home," he said, visibly uncomfortable. The woman noticed Flavio's tired eyes and with a warm smile extended a rose to him. "Here, it's free. You seem to be going through a tough time. I hope this simple gesture can ease your pain." Flavio stood still, overwhelmed by the kindness of this stranger. Her words, so simple and sincere, touched him more, deeply than anything he had heard from his friends or family. He took the rose carefully, almost as if he were handling something sacred. "I don't know what to say. Thank you so much," he murmured, feeling a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. The woman just smiled and nodded, indicating that no more words were needed. "Sometimes a little kindness is all we need," she said before turning back to arrange the other flowers at her stall. "I'll come back and pay for this rose," Flavio promised, still stunned by the gesture. He felt that he couldn't just accept it without giving something in return. He felt the need to repay her somehow, but the elderly woman smiled kindly and said, "It's not necessary, young man. Sometimes giving is the best way to receive." Flavio said his goodbyes and started walking back home, feeling a new urgency in his steps. The simplicity of her gesture had touched him in a way he hadn't expected. Once home, he began searching for his wallet, checking between cushions and bags, until he finally found it fallen inside the sofa. Wallet in hand, he quickly returned to the supermarket, determined to find the woman. However, when he arrived, his heart sank. The woman was no longer there. The small flower stand was empty, and the spot where she had sat was now just a memory. Flavio stood there for a moment, trying to accept that he might never see her again, but her gesture remained etched in his mind as a lesson in humility and true kindness. Back at home, Flavio stayed deep in thought for days, with the woman's rose always in sight, constantly reminding him of that encounter. He wondered how someone so simple could be so generous, while the people he considered friends barely cared about him. It was then that a wild idea began to form in his mind. What if he could find someone like that woman? Someone who was truly kind, even without knowing who he was. He wanted to find someone truly deserving of his fortune. Determined to put this plan into action, Flavio went to his closet and grabbed the oldest clothes he had. He tore them in a few places, messed up his hair, and swapped his expensive shoes for a pair of worn-out sandals. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he barely recognized his reflection. Now, it showed an ordinary man, maybe even a bit disheveled, someone who would go unnoticed on the streets. For the first time in a long while, Flavio smiled. He knew that what he was about to do was risky, but he felt that he was finally on the right path. The plan was in motion, and now it was time to discover who, in a world so focused on appearances and wealth, could see beyond the surface and appreciate what truly mattered. Flavio wandered the streets aimlessly, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. The people around him seemed indifferent to his existence, but he could sense the looks of disdain some cast his way. "Is this how everyone sees me now?" he wondered, trying to grasp how much his new appearance affected others' perceptions of him. He had spent his entire life surrounded by luxury, treated with respect because of his status. But now, in that moment, he felt invisible, like just another face in the crowd. Eventually, he found himself in a plaza. Determined to put his plan into action, Flavio sought someone truly deserving of his fortune. He went to his closet, picked out the oldest clothes he had, tore them in a few places, messed up his hair, and swapped his expensive shoes for a pair of worn-out sandals. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. His reflection now showed an ordinary man, perhaps even a bit shabby, someone who would easily go unnoticed on the streets. For the first time in a long while, Flavio smiled. He knew that what he was about to do was risky, but at the same time, he felt he was finally on the right path. The plan was set, and now it was time to find out who, in a world so focused on appearances and wealth, could see beyond the surface and value what truly mattered. Flavio wandered the streets aimlessly, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. The people around him seemed indifferent to his existence, but he could sense the disdainful looks some threw his way. "Is this how everyone sees me now?" he thought, trying to grasp how much his new appearance affected how others perceived him. He had spent his whole life surrounded by luxury, being treated with respect due to his status. But now, in this moment, he felt invisible, just another face in the crowd. Eventually, he found himself in a plaza and decided to sit on one of the benches. He looked around and, almost without thinking, extended his hand to beg for alms. "Am I going crazy?" he wondered, but instead of pulling back, he smiled bitterly. "I don't know where this will lead, but I'm going to see it through to the end." The reactions he received, however, were harsh. A man walking by glanced at him with contempt and muttered, "Get a job, bum." Others simply passed him by as if he were invisible, just another piece of trash in the urban landscape. Flavio had never felt so mistreated in his entire life. He was used to being respected or at least noticed, but there on that bench in the plaza, he was nothing. As he sat there still processing the harshness of what he was experiencing, a woman walked by and gave him a look full of prejudice. She didn't say anything, but the disdain in her eyes was clear. Flavio was stunned. What did I do to deserve this? He wondered. He was just sitting there, not bothering anyone, yet they treated him as if he were a threat, or worse, as if he were nothing. Days later, Flavio returned to the same place, but this time after leaving his company. He was dressed in one of his most expensive suits, curious to see if a change in appearance would make any difference. When he sat on the same bench in the plaza, he noticed the same woman again. She saw him but didn't recognize him. Instead of disdain, she looked at him with interest sparked in her eyes as they focused on his expensive clothes and the brand-name watch on his wrist. A smile slowly formed on her face, and she began to flirt with him. This only deepened Flavio's indignation. He remained silent, analyzing the situation. "So, it all depends on how I look," he thought, his frustration growing. The difference in treatment was stark, and the experience left a bitter taste in his mouth. Nevertheless, he did not give up on his plan and decided to continue his search, still hopeful of finding someone worthy of his inheritance. Flavio returned to the spot where he had encountered the flower vendor, but she never reappeared. As he walked around the supermarket area, he noticed suspicious glances directed at him. 3 boys, who appeared to be teenagers, approached quickly. Before he could react, one of them snatched the small bag containing the money he used for his experiences. Another boy grabbed his arm, while the third took the money, and they all ran off. Flavio tried to chase them, but his age and recent discouragement had diminished his agility. He watched them disappear in the distance with his money. While he didn't need the money, the sense of helplessness and anger overwhelmed him. How has the world come to this? He wondered, his heart heavy as he stopped to catch his breath. Flavio reflected on what had happened and concluded, "No one in this world deserves my money," feeling betrayed by his own kind. His hope of finding kindness was nearly extinguished. Disillusioned with humanity, he returned to the plaza and sat once again on the same bench where it all had started. With a hardened heart, Flavio vowed to himself that he would never again pretend to be a beggar, and moreover, that he would give nothing to anyone. It wasn't worth it, he thought, feeling emptier than ever. Bitterness had become a part of him, and he knew things would never be the same. As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. Startled, he turned to see a boy who looked no older than 12, holding the small bag of money that had been stolen. "Here," said the boy with a calm and firm voice, returning the bag to Flavio. Confused and dazed, Flavio took the money back and looked at the boy. "How did you get it back?" he asked, still incredulous. "I followed them," the boy explained with a shy smile. "I'm thin but fast. I saw what they did and couldn't just leave it like that." The boy then sat down next to Flavio on the bench. Flavio looked at him with immense gratitude. "Thank you, kid. I don't even know how to thank you." The boy, still looking down, hesitated before asking, "How long have you been living in the area?" "Street, sir." The question surprised Flavio, but upon seeing the boy's clothes, he remembered he was still disguised as a beggar. "My name is Raphael," the boy said, looking up to finally meet Flavio's gaze. For a moment, silence hung between them until Raphael suddenly started to cry. Tears streamed down the boy's face as he sobbed, trying to compose himself. Worried, Flavio leaned closer. "What's wrong, kid? Why are you crying?" With a choked voice, Raphael finally replied, "Dad, I thought I'd never meet you." Flavio was taken aback, frozen in place. "Dad?" he repeated, astonished. "I'm sorry, kid, but I'm not your father. I've never had children," Flavio said gently. Raphael shook his head, still crying, but with a clear determination in his eyes. "You're my father, I'm sure," he insisted. Flavio hesitated, not wanting to hurt the boy further. "Why are you so sure I'm your father?" he asked, trying to understand the situation. "My mother told me you're my father," Raphael replied, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. Flavio sighed, feeling bad about having to disappoint the boy. "I'm really sorry, kid, but your mother's mistaken. I don't know her, and I'm certain she's wrong. I've been sterile since birth and could never have a child, even though it's always been my dream. I'm sorry I'm not your father." Raphael fell silent for a moment, stopping his tears, but not Raphael seemed convinced as he looked at Flavio with an intensity that left the man feeling increasingly bewildered. "You look a lot like me," Raphael said, almost in a whisper. "My brother looks more like my mother." The boy's words made Flavio study him more closely. Suddenly, something about the boy's expression, perhaps the way he raised his eyebrows or the way his eyes sparkled, triggered a memory for Flavio. Could Raphael really resemble someone he had known in the past? The idea seemed so far-fetched that Flavio tried to dismiss it. "Come with me, and I'll prove that you're my father," Raphael insisted, now calmer, but still resolute. Flavio hesitated, but something inside him, perhaps curiosity or a desire to make sense of it all, compelled him to agree. "All right, kid," he finally said. "Show me what you have to show." Side by side, Flavio and Raphael began walking together. As they strolled through the streets, Flavio couldn't help but feel a strange connection with the boy, something he couldn't quite explain. It might have been a reflection of his own unfulfilled wish to be a father. Or perhaps there was something more to this story that he didn't yet understand. The two didn't walk far. Within minutes, Flavio and Raphael arrived in a less populated part of the city. The streets were narrow and poorly lit, and the houses were mostly small and simple, with walls that appeared worn and aged. Flavio felt a shiver as he realized he was in a part of town known for being unsafe. However, his anxiety eased somewhat because his simple, modest clothing drew little attention. Raphael, on the other hand, seemed eager to introduce Flavio to his mother and brother. "We were born on the same day, but I was born first," Raphael remarked, trying to break the silence as he led Flavio to the entrance of a very modest home. Flavio simply nodded, still absorbing his surroundings. He noticed the poor condition of the neighboring houses and wondered how people managed to live in such harsh conditions. Raphael, meanwhile, took a key from his pocket and unlocked the door, calling out for his mother and brother. "Mum, Emmanuel, I'm back." The silence was broken by a weak but enthusiastic voice from inside the house. "I'm here, Raphael." The call came from within. Raphael immediately guided Flavio to a room where a boy, the same age as Raphael, was lying down. The boy, whom Raphael introduced as Emmanuel, appeared visibly pale and thin, with eyes reflecting a blend of exhaustion and innocence. "This is my brother Emmanuel," Raphael said proudly. Flavio entered the small, modest room, taking in the simple surroundings. The room had a heavy atmosphere, tinged with the scent of medicine. Flavio looked around and noticed a chair next to the bed, as well as several bottles of medication arranged on a small table. It was clear that Emmanuel was not only unable to walk, but had also been ill for quite some time. "Hello, Emmanuel," Flavio said, trying to mask his shock at the child's condition. Emmanuel gave a weak but genuine smile. "Hi, are you a friend of Raphael's?" Before Flavio could respond, Raphael asked his brother, "Where's Mom?" "She went to the supermarket, but she should be back soon," Emmanuel replied, his tone suggesting that this was a regular occurrence for them. Just as he finished speaking, the sound of the door opening was heard, followed by a warm, affectionate voice calling out, "My darlings, I'm home." Flavio felt a shiver run down his spine as he recognized the voice, which brought back painful memories of someone he had tried to forget for years. The sound of the woman's footsteps approaching quickened his heartbeat, and he experienced a strange sense of déjà vu. When she finally entered the room, carrying shopping bags, her eyes met Flavio's, and for a moment, it felt as though the world had stopped. She dropped the bags to the floor, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" she nearly shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. Flavio was frozen, unsure of what to say. Standing before him was Sophia, the love from his past, whom he had never truly forgotten, but who had also caused him deep pain. He could hardly believe his eyes. Years ago, Sophia was the woman he had envisioned spending the rest of his life with, but things hadn't gone as he had hoped. Sophia looked as stunned as he felt. They locked eyes in a moment that seemed to stretch on forever until Flavio finally managed to stammer a few words. "Sophia, what is going on here?" She took a step back, as if trying to make sense of what was happening. You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice now filled with a mix of fear and anger. A flood of memories overwhelmed Flavio, like an avalanche. He vividly recalled the day he first met Sophia. At that time, Flavio was just starting his business, struggling to find reliable suppliers. It was during this period that he contacted a major supplier which sent one of their best employees as a representative. That employee was Sophia. From the moment he saw her, Flavio was captivated. Sophia was intelligent, determined, and had a magnetic presence that immediately won him over. Despite his feelings, he maintained his professionalism, focusing on securing the contract his company desperately needed. The business deal was successfully completed, and Flavio began to see more of Sophia with each meeting. Every conversation only deepened the feelings he tried to hide. Eventually, unable to bear it any longer, Flavio confessed his feelings to Sophia. He remembered it vividly, the racing heart, the anticipation, and the fear of rejection. To his surprise and joy, Sophia smiled and admitted she felt the same way. They started dating, and for a while, Flavio believed he had found the love of his life. Their relationship appeared perfect to everyone. Once they decided to be together, they became inseparable. Sophia left her job as a sales representative to work alongside Flavio in his company. Their partnership was strong both in love and in business, and for a time it seemed nothing could break the happiness they shared. However, Flavio's life wasn't free from stress. As the company expanded, he worked harder than ever, dedicating countless hours to the business and often neglecting his health. He ignored the warning signs until he began experiencing frequent dizziness. Concerned, he turned to his friend and trusted physician, Marcelo, for a series of tests. Days later, when Marcelo delivered the results, he tried to reassure Flavio. "Flavio, your tests are normal. You're healthy, but you need to take better care of yourself, eat better, sleep more. Your body is asking for a bit of attention." Flavio exhaled with relief, but Marcelo hesitated before continuing. "There's one thing, Flavio. There's an anomaly in the tests, but it doesn't directly affect your health. I need to tell you this calmly. Flavio, you are sterile. Unfortunately, you will never be able to have children." Marcelo's words hit Flavio like a bomb. He felt as if the ground had vanished beneath him. He had always wanted to be a father, and the thought of never having a child devastated him. In the days that followed, Flavio carried this secret, unsure how to share it with Sophia. The fear of losing her began to consume him. Months passed, and he still hadn't found the right moment to talk to Sophia. Then, unexpectedly, Sophia came home, beaming with happiness and a smile that lit up the room. "Flavio, I have wonderful news," she said, barely containing her excitement. "I'm pregnant." Her words were like a knife to Flavio's heart. He stood frozen, processing the information. How was this possible? He had just learned he was sterile. Anger and distrust quickly took over him, and unable to contain himself, he grabbed the test results Marcelo had given him. Flavio grabbed the test results and showed them to Sophia. "Read this," he said, his voice trembling with anger. Sophia took the paper, still smiling, but as she read it, her smile faded. This can't be right," she murmured in disbelief. "Flavio, I never deceived you. This baby is yours, I swear," she insisted. The argument that followed was intense. Blinded by the pain and betrayal he felt, Flavio's words were harsh. "You're a woman of no character, Sophia. How could you do this to me?" he shouted, his rage overflowing. Sophia, tears streaming down her face, tried to defend herself. "I've never been with another man. I love you, Flavio, and this child is ours. I don't know how, but it's the truth." But Flavio, unable to believe her, succumbed to his fury. "Get out of my house. Get out of my business. I never want to see you again." Sophia paused for a moment before responding with a trembling voice. "If I leave this door, Flavio, I'll never come back." Consumed by pride and pain, Flavio replied coldly, "Then go." Sophia left the house without looking back, and as she had promised, she never returned or contacted him again. Years passed, and Flavio was consumed by regret. He loved Sophia more than anything, but she had also become the source of his greatest suffering. He never managed to get over the loss, and the weight of that final argument haunted him forever, turning him into a bitter and lonely man, unable to forgive himself or move on. Now, Sophia was standing before him. Flavio's expression was a mix of surprise, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite identify. The tension in the air was palpable, and time seemed to stand still in that moment. Still processing Flavio's unexpected presence, Sophia turned to Raphael and asked, with a voice tinged with both astonishment and concern, "Raphael, why did you let him in?" Noticing his mother's bewilderment, Raphael went to a nearby drawer, opened it, and took out an old photograph. He handed the photo to Sophia and answered with the innocent determination of a child, "You said a long time ago that this man was my father. I saw him on the street and spoke to him." Sophia looked at the photo in her hands, immediately recognizing it. It was an image she had taken years ago when Flavio was still part of her life. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling a heaviness in her chest. She had forgotten about the photo and thought Raphael had as well. She never intended to reveal the true identity of Raphael and Emmanuel's father, but Raphael had always been persistent with questions she didn't know how to answer. Now, with Flavio present, the truth was right in front of her. With a resolute look, Sophia told Raphael, "Take care of your brother. I need to speak with this man alone." Raphael nodded and went to the room where Emmanuel was resting. Flavio and Sophia left the house and walked in silence until they reached a quiet spot. They were alone on the deserted street, the tension between them almost palpable. Sophia was the first to break the silence. "You'd better leave and never come back," she said sharply, her voice filled with resentment. Flavio, however, couldn't ignore the overwhelming feeling he had upon seeing her again. Despite the years that had passed and the perceived betrayal, he realized that he still loved Sophia. The words escaped his lips, almost unconsciously. "Emmanuel seems to need help. If you want, I can assist with the child." Sophia began to respond, her voice still tinged with anger. "I don't want your help." But she paused, realizing what was at stake. Her pride was about to take over, but she knew she could be compromising a crucial opportunity for her son. Taking a deep breath, she spoke with more control. "Emmanuel has a genetic condition. There is a specialized hospital where he can receive treatment, but the consultation and care are very expensive." Without hesitation, Flavio replied, "No problem, I'll cover the costs." At the same time, he recalled his own condition, which gave him only a few months to live. As he watched Sophia embrace her son, an idea began to take shape in his mind. "I think I can make them happy," Flavio thought. He knew his time was running out, and the loneliness he felt, despite all his wealth, was unbearable. Flavio then decided that when his time came, he would leave everything to Sophia and her children. On a quiet afternoon, Flavio was in his office when the phone rang. On the other end, the voice of the doctor overseeing Emmanuel's treatment sounded serious. "Mr. Flavio, we need you to come to the hospital for a blood test," the doctor said directly. Flavio was momentarily confused, not understanding the reason for the request. "But why? Isn't Emmanuel improving?" he asked anxiously. The doctor tried to reassure him. "He is improving significantly, but we need to review the parent's medical history. This could help us adjust the treatment and ensure continued progress." Flavio hesitated, feeling a growing discomfort. I am not his father," he said, trying to explain. There was a brief silence on the line before the doctor responded calmly. "I understand, Mr. Flavio, but Sophia informed us that you are Emmanuel's father." Flavio felt a surge of frustration. "Not this again," he thought, recalling Sophia's words from years ago. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Doctor, I've already told you I am not Emmanuel's father." However, the doctor was firm in his response. "I understand your position, but it is crucial that you come in for the test. Whether or not you are the father is a matter we can resolve later. What's important now is Emmanuel's well-being. He agreed to go to the hospital, though he continued to struggle with the conflicting emotions that the situation stirred up. He knew he couldn't let his pride interfere with the child's health. At the hospital, the blood test was conducted, and Flavio went home, waiting for the results with a mix of anxiety and apprehension. A few days later, the doctor asked him to return to the hospital, stating that a personal discussion was needed. When Flavio arrived, he was taken to a private room where the doctor greeted him with a slight smile and a calm expression. "I have good news," the doctor began. The results from your tests and Sophia's have helped us confirm the type of genetic condition Emmanuel has. Both of you carry the same gene, which allows us to better understand the condition and provide a more effective treatment for him. Flavio felt a mix of relief and confusion. "But doctor, I've already told you I'm not Emmanuel's father," he insisted, hoping the confusion would finally be resolved. The doctor looked directly into Flavio's eyes and responded calmly, "Mr. Flavio, I conducted a DNA test, and it confirms that you are Emmanuel's father." The doctor's words hit Flavio like a devastating blow. He felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. "But doctor, I had a test years ago that showed I was infertile. This can't be right," he said, his voice trembling. Shaking, the doctor maintained a professional demeanor and suggested a solution. "There might have been an error, Mr. Flavio. It might be best to repeat the test. Here's the prescription, and I'll recommend a reliable laboratory." Stunned, Flavio left the hospital feeling as though he were trapped in a nightmare. Over the following days, he repeated the test, dreading what the results might reveal. When the results finally arrived, the truth was undeniable. He was not infertile. His world crumbled at that moment. Instead of joy, Flavio wept with sadness, grieving for Sophia, the years they had been apart, and the children he never knew he had. Desperate, Flavio went to Sophia's house. When she opened the door, he fell to his knees, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. "Sophia, forgive me. I discovered the truth. I'm not infertile. Raphael and Emmanuel are my children. How could I have doubted you?" Sophia, with a serious expression, looked at Flavio without showing any emotion. "I told you 13 years ago," she replied, her voice as cold as ice. Her words struck Flavio like a knife to the heart. The reality of his actions hit him with full force. He had destroyed their relationship, rejected his own children, and left Sophia to bear all the pain alone. The truth was unbearable. He tried to take Sophia's hands, seeking any sign of forgiveness, but she pulled away. "You left me, Flavio. You left me alone with our children. Everything we suffered, everything we went through was because you didn't trust me," Sophia said, her voice filled with pain. She had no words left to say, only tears to shed. Guilt consumed Flavio, and he knew that nothing he could say would undo the past. Sophia, firm and resolute, did not yield to his pleas. "I did what I had to do for our children. Now, what happens from here on depends on you, Flavio. Not words, but actions." Flavio remained silent, knowing that he needed far more than apologies to rebuild any kind of relationship with Sophia and their children. With a heavy heart, he decided it was time to be completely honest with her. He called her for a serious conversation and, with a trembling voice, revealed what had been tormenting him. "Sophia, I need to tell you something," he began. "I've discovered that I'm ill and I don't have much time left. I want you to know that when I'm gone, I will leave everything to you and the children. It's the least I can do to try to make amends for what I did in the past." Sophia, who had maintained a defensive stance until then, saw his anger dissipate for a moment. Hearing Flavio's words about his limited time left deeply affected her. "I'm so sorry, Flavio," she said with sincerity as she processed the news. Understanding Flavio's condition, Sophia decided to let him get closer to their children. Raphael, beaming with pride, having finally found the father he had always imagined, and with Emmanuel now healthier and able to walk, Raphael was delighted to see his family reunited. Sophia observed these moments with a mix of happiness, sometimes glancing at Flavio and struggling to believe that he was truly ill. "Flavio, are you sure you're sick?" Sophia asked during one of these moments of doubt. "Yes," he replied firmly. "The tests clearly show it." "But where did you have this test done?" Sophia pressed. "At Marcello's clinic, my friend," Flavio answered. Flavio repeated the test at another laboratory, and when he received the results, he could hardly believe them. He was not sick. The relief he felt was immense, so much so that he jumped with joy, happy to know he would have more time with his children and to rebuild the relationship he had lost over the years. However, that joy was soon overshadowed by a sense of betrayal. Although Marcello had been his friend for a long time, Flavio could not ignore that something was wrong. He decided to investigate further and, to his surprise, discovered that Marcello was involved in several legal cases for unethical practices. Marcello was not only falsifying test results to sell expensive medications to healthy patients, but in Flavio's case, there was a personal motive. It appeared that Marcello had always envied Flavio's wealth and success and had used his position to exploit him. Using his position as a doctor, Marcello manipulated test results and sought to ruin Flavio's life by destroying his happiness in every possible way. This revelation left Flavio both furious and determined to seek justice. He refused to let Marcello's betrayal go unpunished, gathering witnesses and other victims of Marcello's unethical practices to build a strong case against him. After a lengthy and challenging legal battle, Marcello was found guilty and sentenced to 20 years in prison for his crimes, including falsifying test results and selling unnecessary medications. Although Flavio felt a sense of justice seeing Marcello face consequences for his actions, the weight of the lost time with Sofia and their children continued to torment him. There was no way to recover the years lost, the missed opportunities to be present as a father and partner, all due to the lies and manipulations of someone he had considered a friend. Flavio shared everything with Sofia, revealing how he had uncovered Marcello's deceit and how his trusted friend had manipulated him. Sofia listened attentively, both impressed and outraged by the situation. Yet the resentment she still felt towards Flavio did not disappear. "You could have chosen to believe me from the start," she said, her words laced with pain. Despite her lingering resentment, Sofia decided to allow Flavio to reconnect with their children, understanding the importance of healing and moving forward. Regardless of what had happened between them, Raphael and Emmanuel deserved to have their father present. Determined to make amends for past mistakes, Flavio bought a better house for them and started paying child support regularly, ensuring that the children lacked nothing. Flavio attempted to reconnect with Sofia, but found a barrier. Sofia maintained an emotional distance, making it clear that she had not yet moved past the betrayal she had felt. Despite this, Flavio did not give up. He became a very involved father, missing work meetings to spend more time with his children, taking them to parks, malls, movies, and even helping with their schoolwork. His commitment to being present in their lives was evident. Gradually, Sofia's heart began to soften. She saw how dedicated Flavio was to the children and how happy they were to have him around. One day, when Flavio arrived to pick up the children and take them to his house, Sofia informed him that they were at their grandmother's house and would be home later. While they waited, they started talking, and to their surprise, the conversation turned out to be long and pleasant. As time passed, Flavio, feeling more comfortable, mustered up the courage to ask, "Sofia, would you like to go to the movies with me tomorrow? I know you like films." Sofia smiled, something Flavio hadn't seen from her in a long time, and responded softly, "Yes, I'd love to." Soon after, they heard the door open and the children come in. The happiness was evident on everyone's faces. They were finally reunited, ready to rebuild what had been lost. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next exciting story.